All right, we're live with Eric Post. You may have seen his stuff on TikTok. Um, we'll actually watch a video, so I'm not going to go into much explanation. But he comes on TikTok and asks a few questions about the direction that his city of Portland, Oregon, is moving in, and then I dug into a little more, and I've noticed you made some other ones around
Did
July.
y'all did y'all find my Facebook page as well?
I haven't found it yet, but we'll go and dig it
Okay.
out right after this. But well, how about we go into when um, your video you made that made all this big splash of you and your is it in a restaurant?
Yeah, yeah, it is.
That's not the first one you made that has kind of I guess a big impact. I saw another one where a flag was taken down to the center around the 4th of July, and subsequently, someone mauled it and burned it.
Yeah, I've had a few videos. I've done a few things around Portland to try and grab the attention of people to just bring awareness to some of the issues that we face in a real honest conversation, an honest way, in a way that we kind of place our false moralities aside and sit there and look at each other in the face and realize that sometimes those moralities that are binding us to our groups of people are blinding us to the things that are side effects. And that's one of the things I'm seeing in Portland. And so that started with the riot. It started actually, my speaking up actually started when Trump was elected, when we started having flag burning here. And then, so that would have been what 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
And then I've just kind of continued on with that mission of trying to have conversations with people.
Mm. So, all right. So you got your notoriety through TikTok. Uh,
No,
no, you
no,
didn't.
no, I just started on TikTok just a few months ago, maybe 6, 7 months ago or
Oh,
something like that.
really?
Yeah. So just, and it was just for fun with my daughter and just to share ideas and to kind of show that you can use social media in a positive way. You can use social media to have a positive influence. You can use social media in a way where you don't have to dance only and follow trends. You don't have to have hooks and fancy graphics. You can actually be a person of value. You can have done work in your life where you have things that people find interesting to say. And so that was my experiment with her and challenge with her, was to show her that even on a platform like TikTok, which I didn't understand 6, 7 months ago, I was trying to find a way where I could be a value to people in a new platform. And so that's just, yeah, tried TikTok then.
Well, I have to say, well, that's how my wife found the All American Dad 111 was through TikTok. So you're reaching an audience of conservatives, and uh-huh. and then she shared it with us.
Yeah. And I think the name, and it's funny because my daughter actually picked that name. And it probably happens to be because my Facebook page is Eric Post American, and some of my friends call me Eric Post American or whatever. I've had some followers on Facebook for the last few years. And so, some of my friends call me All American Dad or whatever. So, she picked it from there. But, I'm sure the conservatives kind of gravitate towards that thing. But for me, being American isn't political. Being American doesn't mean, because I am a Marine Corps veteran, it's not just because I served in the Marines. It's being an American is a whole bunch of people from a whole different backgrounds with a whole different kinds of beliefs.
Hmm.
And I generally believe that if we are going to have a prosperous America, we can't have a president in the White House like we do right now that's doing nothing but divisive rhetoric.
What?
And
I
yeah,
I was under the impression, didn't he just give a statement the other day that he exceeded all expectations?
yeah, I
I
think that was today. The great uniter. No, and I hate to sit here and cast stones because I can't imagine what it would be like for the president of the United States. But I'd welcome him to a debate any day.
yeah,
And we have a man that can form a complete sentence. I'm not going to respect him, to be honest with you.
I'll go
So
one further. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be the president of the United States suffering dementia.
all of that, all
Yeah.
of that. And I hate to even, like that's, I don't even know anything about him personally. All I'm witnessing as a citizen, wanting to be inspired, wanting to be led, wanting to hear a coherent sentence, even, that
Hmm.
doesn't seem like a task that I should be, giving up on from the president of the United States of America. We,
Hmm.
we should be leading the nation with our intellect and our prosperity and our
Yeah.
inspiration. And yet we're the laughing stock right now. So I don't think
Yeah.
that's partisan. I think that's a fair observation.
Seems like we're trying to hide from the nation, or all the nations of the world right now, because
Yeah.
it's humiliating. It is.
Yeah.
It
Well,
really is. But
it's it's tough. We're in a we're in a tough place where we have made everything has become a political divisionary fight. Everything. If tomorrow Trump or Biden came out and explained the best way to hang your toilet paper roll on that little springy tube, it would
Yeah.
become a political argument, and you
Yeah.
would probably see violence in the streets over it. By the way, the correct way is toilet paper out, just for anyone
Obviously.
wondering. Yeah.
Obviously.
It,
Guys, how long are we going today, by the way? I don't want to talk too much.
how long you got? This show
Oh,
is just chatting to you today.
So that topic that you just mentioned, if you don't mind, I'd like to share my experience with understanding how important that divisive rhetoric is, and from when I started speaking my mind 5 years ago, because it was such an eye-opening experience of what it was like to have a first viral video, because simply I was trying to find a way to not just galvanize that people that think like me and look like me and vote like me, and I tried something and it worked. And so if you don't mind, I could share that story real quick, or we could talk about the
No,
lessons
please.
I learned from that or whatever.
Yeah,
Go right into it.
Share the story, and then I'd like to play the video for anyone who hasn't seen it.
Okay. Okay. So what happened was when, Trump was elected, and here in Portland, obviously there was riots kicked off, and I was at work, and there was a sanctioned event that they got a permit for, and it was called Flag Burning Extravaganza. Okay. In the middle of our Pioneer Courthouse Square here in Portland. It was just a bunch of people that were collecting American flags and just burning them in the middle of our city, right? So I'm at work, and a bunch of my friends are sending me footage from the news of these burning flags, and my blood pressure is rising and rising and rising, because it wasn't anything. They didn't have a cause. They weren't there to to fight for something. They were just there to cause hate and mayhem and make a stink, right? So my blood pressure was elevating. I was like, fine, can I cuss on your show? Is that okay?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was like, fuck it. I'm going home. I'm going to put on my boots and my jeans. I'm going to go downtown. I'm going to collect as many fucking flags as I can. All right. That was my mood in that moment. And I went home and it changed real quick, and I'm ready. And I'm like, I know, honey, this isn't smart, but I got to do this. Somebody's got to take a stand. This isn't right. I have this strong sense of right and wrong. And no matter what happens, I'm just going to go down and just try and talk to people and just literally take as many as I can. Right. To me, my flag represents my grandfather, represents all these fallen, heroes. And I was ready to go downtown, and she was like, don't. I was like, I'm going. So I get in the car and I started driving downtown, and I get a text message, and I looked, and it was from my daughter, and it just says, I love you, Daddy.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, she outsmarted me. She used my daughter to get it to me. And I pulled over on the side of the road, and I sat there, and I was like, okay, what's my point? If I'm trying to actually change hearts and minds, all I'm doing is causing more division and more elevated emotions. How can I reach people, and what kind of example am I setting for my children right now? Yes, I do think this is right, and I do think it's important to stand up for what's right, but can I do it in a way that I'd be more proud of if my children watched me do every single thing, if I had their little four eyes on me? So I was near the Willamette National Cemetery here, and so I drove up there to clear my head, and I literally parked the car and looked over, and I was by the Medal of Honor winner monuments that were right there, and by the flag. So as I sat there, I literally just started bawling. I was thinking about the people that didn't have a voice, that these families that they had fallen, friends and family that were laid there buried, and they didn't have a voice for all these flags being burned. And I knew their hearts were breaking seeing these images on TV across the nation. So I just took my phone out there, and I just made a video and put on my personal Facebook page welcoming those protesters and rioters up to the cemetery to meet with me. And I'd walk them through and tell stories and share history of the country and sacrifice, and that the flag was a symbol that they should be celebrating, because it gave them the freedoms to be upset and do what they want, not burn it. And some things that I said that I've since changed a little bit, but it was a very emotional video, and it was very raw, and it started going viral. And as a result of that, the next day I stood up there, was a man of my word, and I had hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people come and meet me up there. Not all that were, protesting, but people that were willing to hear and start sharing ideas. And I did news appearance on all 50 states. I was in Maxim magazine, Task and Purpose, everything, kind of sharing this message of how do we unite somehow instead of just piss each other off. So that was my first lesson in really trying to create messages that would reach people that didn't just think like me. And it was very visceral, and it helped my family and put me on this journey to try and share more messages.
Good. That's outstanding. And I think that's an outstanding way to approach it, to try to educate who you can out of it. I mean, obviously some people, they're not going to hear a message,
No.
but some of them might. And if you can gather even one of them, then I think that's excellent. We've tried our best to chat to a few people.
And avoiding conflict. I mean, yeah, you're right. I think that's a conversation that a lot of veterans have amongst themselves too. I know me and my father went at it one time when I think I got back from Afghanistan, and we were talking about that actual subject as it came up on the TV. There were some kids burning the flags, and I'm like, Dad, you can't get upset about it, because if you make a law against it, then you're actually going against exactly what that flag is supposed to represent. And
Yeah.
and it's an important topic to discuss. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
It is because it's actually not the burning of the flag that you're discussing. You're discussing about the importance of the First Amendment. You're discussing freedoms. You're discussing freedom of expressions. You're discussing things that are very foundational to the country, not just, I mean, I'm not trying to put down the flag, but it's a very human thing that we're discussing. And it actually just really gives a nod to the importance of us understanding what the First Amendment and our Constitution really doesn't do. So that's what I found. And are you guys familiar at all with my documentary project that I've been working on at all? Or
We are not.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, shout it
oh,
out.
all right. This okay. That project is actually what gave me some of the clarity to make the video in my restaurant the other day.
Okay.
Honestly. So when the riots kicked off here, I was torn between two worlds of people who my friends are police officers and whatnot, and then torn between worlds of people in my community of color that have had some issues in their life with certain things. And so when it first started kicking off, I was talking to people about those issues. I'm very visible in my community and learning a lot of things I didn't know about. And at the same time, I was getting messages from the police officer families talking about the doxing and the violence that was starting going on in my city, started to burn and things like that. So it just started going from there, and I started getting more and more involved. And that was when on the 4th of July, I did go down in the middle of downtown, in the middle of the riots, and took the flag off the front of my house and put it on the elk statue where they had burned and thrashed the elk. And it was just basically trying to catch everybody's attention and be like, hey man, if you really do want change, you can't do it in the middle of chaos. All chaos does is destroy things. So now it had been like 35 days by that point, and the city was utterly in chaos. And I was just trying to make a point that if this is really what you want, now is the time to prove what you want. Is what you want actually just anarchy and violence, or you want progress? Then let's take a pause and I'll bring people together. So that's what I did, and that went pretty viral. The next day I gave a speech downtown, went pretty viral, and then I did an actual big rally downtown. Hundreds of people came and news came, and it was kind of a shit show because Antifa, still wanted to attack me because I was trying to stop the violence. So I became the victim of, or the, I hate the word victim, but the target of threats and whatnot. My family, I had to have a bunch of SEALs actually provide security for my family for a while and crazy stuff like that, just to do a peace rally here in Portland. It was that toxic. And then kept going deeper and deeper. Then at that moment, a film crew that had been filming every night since day 2 of the riots came up to me and asked me for an interview, and I did it. And after a few discussions, I signed on to produce a documentary that was researching and investigating and documenting the protests, riots, and rallies. So I spent the last year and a half going across the country to Kenosha, LA, Seattle, Washington, D.C. for election night, inauguration night. I was there on January 6th, New York, Chicago, Minneapolis, all these places. So I filmed, at over 214 protest riots and rallies. I sat down with the heads of the left, the heads of the right, and everybody in between. So it's been a wild year and a half of opening my eyes to what's going on across the country for sure.
Sounds frustrating.
What's your read on the? Have you sat down with any Antifa groups?
Many in many different cities.
What's your overall read on them?
That as individuals in every group, people generally are okay, but madness takes over in groups, and that becomes the default in groups. And I saw that happen time after time after time. And I've sat many nights with leaders of Antifa. No, they say no, it's not leaders and it's just an ideology.
Yeah.
No, there's leaders and there's a system, and talking with them, heads of Black Lives Matter, heads of the Black Panthers, heads of the Brown Panthers, you name it. I've sat with all of them. I was at the private wake for Dante Wright. We're there with Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. Like I literally have sat and met down with everybody you can possibly think of on the far right and the far left. So, Antifa is just a product of a frustration with the U.S. government, and it's so radicalized that they don't want a government. They literally want anarchy, right?
Yeah.
Well, when I try, go ahead, please.
I'm a self-proclaimed anarchist, but I'm an anarchist. I'm a capitalist. I'm the anarchist that wants to get along with people. I have no tolerance for Antifa as a whole. What they've been doing, maybe as individuals, I might, but
and that's actually it's what a cool thing that you just were able to say that with as much anger as you have against them, and I do too. Like they doxed my businesses, they thrashed my businesses.
Yeah.
They brought Black Bloc from Seattle to the west, all up the West Coast to come battle me at this. It's a disaster, right? It's a disaster, and what they did to our city and costing us millions of dollars, and really caused issues with the long-term psychology of these police officers and federal officers. Federal officer ended up hanging himself, here in the. I mean, it's a mess, right? So I have no tolerance for that, but I'm trying to retain my humanity for individuals.
How do they have an opportunity to be angry? Most of them are 19 to 24. I mean, they might next week learn how to wipe their ass properly
or pay taxes.
They might. And I think the issue comes from, just for me to soapbox it for a minute, the issue comes from, the cathedral, our education system, our media system, the bureaucracies in government all belong to that side and all work their darndest to point out, work their darndest to drive it that way. And I think that's going to destroy us.
I was going to say, how else would they feel? I mean, it's literally all they told is everything they're taught is through the lens of oppressed and oppressor.
Yeah.
Of course.
And there's no take responsibility for yourself. None of that is ever taught to them once.
But it's very true that we have a society. I mean, I absolutely love this country, but part of the downside of this country is that we're so fucking prosperous that you can just be pissed off about nothing and feel that that's valuable.
Yeah.
You can create a false hierarchy of virtue based on how much suffering you do, and it doesn't have to be your own suffering. It can be the suffering of somebody you've never met before, a class you've never understood of people, and take on their suffering, and therefore you have meaning because you get a bunch of other fucking people to agree with that you're so bad and things are so bad. It gives you a purpose.
Well, there are some serious issues. The opportunity for success isn't the same as it was I'm a Gen Xer for my generation, and mine isn't the same as it was for my father's generation, and so on and so forth. So there is room for improvement, and we've tried working on that on this show every little bit. I honestly think the issue is the government. The boomers turned every issue in life over to the government to come up with a solution.
Well, if you hold a voluntary event, you need insurance, and you're probably going to get sued anyway. I mean, it's almost like when you try to do something right.
It's not just that. It's their life. They are working towards a negative. They're all going to school. School's gotten more expensive, and the opportunities after school are, dying on the vine. And a lot of that they can chalk up to their own fault. If you act like that,
a little bit. I think that our institutions, what I found is, it's not that the opportunity is there, is that there's a disconnect between what the actual opportunity is and what our archaic institutions provide. That's the actual issue. There's massive opportunity out there. I'm an investor. I invest in startup businesses. I consult for businesses. I have many startups working on right now. I mean, the opportunity is massive. It's the disconnect between what the real world is and what our archaic educational system is teaching. That's where the angst comes from.
That is true, and most of them are driven towards education. Even when I was in high school, they all talked about college, and I'm glad my dad said to me, "Unless we have a rich relative that dies," so I joined the Army.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I didn't tell my my mom at the time that when I joined the Marines when I was a junior.
Yeah.
Just did it.
Yeah.
But you know,
Anyways, go on.
but think back, how long ago did you graduate from high school? Either one of you guys?
94.
96.
Okay, yeah, 93. So on the same age. Now that, that time period since when we graduated to now, we understand how much change, right?
Mhm.
Now, what's truly, truly, truly in every aspect, we're looking at 4 times the amount of change in the same time period for this next generation.
Yeah.
That's the speed and that's why this causes this angst and this just stress, this constant like, oh shit, what's going to happen? Because we feel it, how fast it's changing. Imagine they're feeling, because the speed of exponential curve, we can't even understand it really. We're great at thinking linearly. We're not really geared for exponential thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And they're having to deal with that right now.
That is true. That is true. Yeah, I agree with you completely. I mean, let's just think of how different the world is since 2001. I mean, things we took for granted when we were all in the military.
Well, even just this one, let's look at one category of people, which happens to be the largest essentially category of people right now in the United States. That's essentially like delivery drivers, truck drivers. Okay.
Uh-huh.
That's roughly 8% of our population.
Yep.
That's a massive number. It's the number one filed tax return in our country is a driver of some sort. That will be gone completely in 10 years.
That is true.
So just that one category. All right. Now we have a lot of restaurant, in the hospitality field that's displaced. And we're talking like a 20 to 30% displacement of the workforce of our entire population in just the next 10 years. We've never seen that sort of disruption before. So it's boys, it's coming. It's coming.
And there's no answer for it.
Well, can I get deep real quick for a second?
Yeah, go deep.
I thought these Silicon Valley guys were crazy when they're talking about universal income. I thought it was a crazy socialist, leftist agenda. Mark Zuckerberg, these guys come up, the Bill Gates kind of thing, this universal income. Like, holy shit, you're going to pay people to do nothing? No. I see now it's literally because they'll be displaced and they literally won't have value to society.
I think if we go towards that, we'll be looking at more just modern day feudalism.
So
you'll belong to the producer of your local area.
If you can't buy a house, yeah.
And that's why this discussions are having to happen. There's these guys that meet every single year and they're talking about these things. And I used to think, and I've had the fortunate ability to now have communication with some of these people. And I was sitting on the outside thinking, man, this is some sort of crazy socialist thing. And no, it's a legitimate concern of how do you band-aid society together when there's going to be a class of people that don't have a ton of value. So,
yeah, that's a good point. That it is a good point, but I don't know. It seems like the way we're moving is dystopian. The vaccine mandates, that's dystopian. I mean, every future scary movie starts out with exactly this playbook.
Yes, it does.
Well, matter of fact, the largest, deadliest war in history started out with this playbook. That's why the Nazis were able to turn the Germans against the Jewish people. Was through this playbook.
In this deep research I did from this, documentary, I went back to the beginning of humanity. I was studying the rise and fall of civilizations, the rise and fall of humanities, the transition that we went from, nomads to farmers, and so on, just this evolution of mankind and civilizations, and from the Romans, the Persians, and everything else, and then to the greatest experiment of all time being America, and the rapid changes we've had to go through. And we're just a baby civilization, but history doesn't repeat itself. Humans do. Mm-hmm. And we are just the product of our caveman minds. And we have a massive gap between our caveman minds and our institutions and our godlike technology. It's creating issues that we're just not prepared to deal with as a society, both systematically or emotionally, either one. And so you can't look back for a playbook like we used to right now, because we just don't have. There's variables in place now. Amazon, Tesla, Facebook, we didn't have essentially companies that were replacing the power of governments then.
Yeah,
we do now.
Yeah. Look at what Twitter did during the last election. Look at what Twitter's doing right now.
Right.
With their actions with some of the Republican senators and congress people.
So long as you got a free market, you'll have an interjection of other competitive forces like Gab and Getter and things
Yep.
like that. But
Sure.
but to put everyone's mind at ease about losing our delivery drivers, you can also look at it from the perspective that these individuals will be liberated from that mindless task to go do something much more productive. And it's the same with a few other
Well,
institutions.
hold on. Liberated from a mindless task. Now, truck driving is not a mindless task. We found out in Colorado, 4 months ago, what it happens if you truck drive under a mindless task. The guy got 111 years for it.
Fair enough.
Okay, let's call it an art form that
Hold on.
would
It's
rather...
not an art form. It's a task that requires extreme concentration.
Here we go,
Permanent.
Eric.
No, I'm serious.
No, I totally agree with you there.
Those guys are packing 47,000 pounds around. You can't mess up. You cannot. But anyways, let's
So
go
is
to
carriage driving.
yeah, carriage driving. You pack maybe 2,000 pounds around. It's a big difference.
I wouldn't want to get in the way of a horse,
Okay, sure.
but
I
either
wouldn't want to get in
direction.
the way of 1,100 horses. But anyways, you say it frees them up to do other things. Please explain.
So we have a housing shortage, right?
Okay.
Imagine if you have all those truck drivers
Uh-huh.
saying, well, and here's the beautiful thing
Why
about
do
a
we
free
have
market.
a housing shortage?
This is the beautiful thing about a free market. If
Okay.
you are hungry, you can go find something to do that'll make money. And nobody's going to tell you what you have to do. I hope we stay in that situation. But
You can go find something to do and hope it makes money. But anyways,
Okay.
why do
Can I
we
fuck
have
you up
a
little bit more?
why do we have a housing shortage? We got to go to that. Why do we have a housing
well,
shortage?
that's because of the government.
The government is restricting building. That is exactly why we have a housing shortage.
So
Okay.
two things. I don't know. One of my businesses, I used to own multiple real estate franchises, both as a brokerage, mortgage companies. I've owned a housing building development company, land development, multifamily, everything. I've sat on housing panels across the country and spoken on real estate across even in many parts of the world. So I'll address that in a second, but also to your point on the change of, being liberated from one to the next. When we had the Industrial Revolution, the jobs from farming and those sorts of jobs were replaced because of the industry that was created.
That
as a
was
result of that
replaced slowly. You know what the big argument was? This is the biggest argument with the invention of the automobile was, what do we do with all the horse shit shovelers in New York City now? That was a huge argument.
Right? Absolutely.
And it was chaos, and there were riots, and it was the same thing we're seeing now, except the difference is it was guys that actually had a job that all of a sudden started losing their jobs.
But the difference was that they had a job to replace it with.
Well,
That's where I was going.
some
We
of them
created
did.
jobs.
Some of them did. Some of them made their own jobs. There was a boom that happened. A lot of them became, probably spread into the market. A lot of them probably became mechanics. But that's another good point. What do the truck drivers move into?
And they'll figure that out. They'll figure it out for themselves. We don't have to decide
Maybe.
that centralized.
Maybe they'll, no, it is a big question. It is a big question. How does that work?
I'll tell you what I'm teaching my kids is to basically understand what the currencies that will matter. The currencies that will matter in the future are influence, being able to
Yep.
speak, move people, being able to sell will always be of influence. And then maintaining a constant state of curiosity will be a currency, because those that get stuck in their ways won't be flexible to learn or want to learn new skills. And that'll be a very depressive moment.
Be vocationally nimble.
Yep.
Yeah.
So those are conversations I'm having in my house, just preparing them for, the things I can't even begin to understand.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's not like you can teach them a specific skill.
No.
How do you approach that, Eric? Like you got kids, you want to talk about these subjects. Like, do you have like a dinner time conversation with them, or do you have like an hour family time that you just sit down and talk about these things?
I have a crazy great relationship. I have a 15-year-old son and a 16-year-old girl. They're 18 months apart. They're 2 years apart in school. They're gems. I mean, they're beautiful young human beings. And I started off very, very beginning, be very intentional with my parenting to not teach them things, to not preach at them, but to constantly provide an environment of self-discovery for them, and I could lead them that way. Because people don't learn what you teach them; they learn on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So, once you go from the physical parenting of changing diapers and hauling their shit around to the intellectual and emotional parenting that I'm in now, I knew I just needed to outsmart them and get ahead of them in those ways. So every single time when there was a problem, I'd say, sis, I've never had a 6-year-old girl. You've never been a 6-year-old girl before. We're going to do this together. What are your solutions? So I invited them into every single conversation, every solution of any challenge that we ever had, and just constantly taught them humility, problem solving, and to learn for themselves, and not to be subjugated to my parents are smart or my parents are dumb or the government can save me or my boss will tell me what to do, or because that's what people do. They're in this thing of like, oh, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Just, government, come fucking save me. Come up with this cure for me. Drill instructor, tell me what to do. No, I literally wanted them to at any point in time have the benefit of autonomy, financially, emotionally, and intellectual autonomy, constantly. So yeah,
I like
that
that.
was basically my vibe from the beginning with them. Thanks for asking.
I like that. I think that's a model everyone should parent on is well, not parenting, but teaching young people to be
Critical thinking and negotiating
yeah,
skills and peaceful parenting.
yeah, constructive adults.
Mm-hmm.
And it's real leadership, guys. You saw it in the military. You see it in corporations. You
Oh,
see it
wait a minute.
around.
Now, I was in the army, so.
Well, what I mean by that is that you saw bad and good.
Oh, if that's what you're saying, yeah, you got it. Yeah,
For
I'm there.
sure.
I don't know. There's a
sure.
couple NCOs that wandered through once in a while.
Oh yeah.
We had I think I had Lieutenant Wise. I had one Mustang lieutenant that come through that was fairly good, except he had a bad temper. That was his downside. But
I had a
He's on
lieutenant
top.
walk through landmine infested areas in front of us once. So we
that
actually
is
got to
true
follow
leadership
him.
from the front. I like it. Anyway, so let's go
Yeah.
through this video you posted, and then we'll talk
Oh,
about
yeah,
it
yeah,
after. We both found this quite interesting. Okay, let me get it pulled up.
So this is the video my wife sent us, and this is how we were introduced to you.
Yeah. It's oh man, it is quite interesting. Now it is going to block you out on the screen, so people watching this will only see your video, but they'll see you either way.
I hate watching this.
It's my restaurant that was going to be closing down because Portland's turned into a shithole. But last night, people came in and robbed it, stole a bunch of equipment, ransacked the place, so we're cleaning up. I honestly used to love this town. But the rise in crime and homelessness, drug abuse, depression, isn't despite all these progressive policies. It's a direct result of these progressive policies. Same thing for Seattle, LA, Minneapolis, DC, New York, San Francisco, on and on and on. I may show you just on my way here, but I had to drive by and get here. Before you say I'm some sort of uncompassionate person talking about the homeless, I don't think there's any compassion letting people lay in filth on the side of the freeway. I don't think there's any compassion enabling drug abuse and substance abuse. I don't think there's any compassion with parents that have to sweep the soccer field before they let their little kids play soccer because there's so many hypodermic needles around. I don't think there's any compassion about businesses being fearful of employees walking to and from their car. I don't think that's compassion at all. Oregon and Portland holds itself as the darling child of progressive cities and progressive states. But they also are the lowest in the country in terms of public school ranking, highest in the country in terms of depression, substance abuse, illness issues. Couple that with the fact that they rank the lowest in support for drug abuse and mental illness. What do you expect would happen when you decriminalize drugs? When you villainize the police and defund the police? When you allow looting and rioting that is done in the name of social justice? When you foster and normalize homelessness and drug abuse? I don't wish these things would be true, but it is. You can't vote on and put policies in place because they sound good. You have to do what works. My hometown, my home state, is not getting anything that used to. I've had one party in charge of both for so many decades. This is the compounding result. Please let this serve as a canary in the coal mine. Don't let these toxic ideologies permeate into your towns, into your states. Don't let anybody cloak progressive policies under the term of compassion. But if anybody feels inclined to disagree with me, instead of just hiding behind a keyboard and putting something in the comments, put a date and time that you want to live debate me. I don't care how big of a creator you are. I don't care if you're a politician. I don't care if you're Joe Biden. This isn't acceptable. People shouldn't have to live like this. If you're not willing to discuss and debate these ideologies, and you don't have a position to stand on, I'm willing to debate and discuss this anytime with anybody. Let me know.
All right. Yeah, that was uh that was quite moving. Now I have, my views differ on yours on our drug laws.
I
Because
bet not. I want to hear yours to see what you think.
well, in 1971 we ramped up the war on drugs. In 1980 we ramped it up again, and it's our losingest war. It has done more to strip freedoms away from Americans than anything else.
So we actually totally agree. We 100% agree. My issue, and see, you can only pack so much into an ad lib TikTok that's 2.5 minutes long. But my problem is we live in a state in Oregon where we rank the lowest for substance abuse services and mental health addiction services.
And that's a big thing, yeah.
So
And
I don't think it's criminal to have a mental illness or to be addicted to drugs. I think
Yeah.
it's criminal to deregulate, decriminalize, foster an environment where we have open air drug markets catered and cashed as homeless camps, and then you don't provide them any services. That's what I meant by what else did you expect?
good. And not just that, but they stand in between. Okay, the police are supposed to stand in between Joe Citizen and these drug markets. And they have eliminated the police to a point where the police are no longer that bulwark between the two.
And that's my problem. We have and I got that term from the book, Michael Schellenberg's book, San Francisco.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, and actually I'm talking to him. I have an interview with him on Friday. And so, I got that word from his book, San Francisco, when he calls them open air drug markets. And that's what we have. They're running sex trafficking through there. They're running motorcycles and stolen car parts and stolen bicycles and stolen gear from places like my restaurant, right out in the open. And the people on the streets aren't the ones that are displaced by high housing prices.
No.
And capitalism.
There might be one or two of them.
Of course, and
Sure.
I hate to speak in absolutes.
We'll even say
fair.
we'll give them leverage. There's 10%.
Yeah, it's even too high. And these aren't my numbers. I actually have called and talked to the
but let's
shelters
go.
that work these. Yeah.
90% you can split into three camps. You can split into mental illness, drug abuse, or drug abuse with mental illness. And usually someone who
just
starts
criminal.
out, or usually someone who starts out in the drug abuse one, when they get that deep into it, they soon jump into that mental illness one because the drugs tend to cook your brain. The one thing Dare
drives
got
you crazy.
right was that commercial with the egg.
Yeah, so absolutely, that's a good point. So we actually do agree. I actually am not a fan of stuffing our prisons with people that have a mental illness or a drug addiction problem. I just believe that we need to enforce laws, and we can't grant passes based on your skin color, or you just happen to feel bad for you because you have a drug abuse problem. We need to fairly educate these laws, and we need to actually put people in a place for success, and we can't give them a chance of success when they're wandering about with no support from a state and a government that sends that they support these people. This is lip service. This is actually tragedy that they're manipulating this group of people that can't advocate for themselves, and they're the ones that I'm pissed off about. Right? I think that the left will criticize people on the right when we talk about homo, say, "Oh, you're just heartless," and no, I think it's incredibly uncompassionate to let them live this way. When I say let them live, not from a higher standpoint, but I'm saying you don't want to enable an addict. You don't want to enable somebody that has mental illness. You want to support them and give them services and help them get to where they actually want to go. And that's not happening.
And
that's
you
my
honestly,
criticism.
we need to be hard on them. We need to show them that tough love that drives them into a better position in life, because it doesn't sound pretty happy to be dead on a street, dead in a gutter. It doesn't sound happy to go into the center of a city and that's my bathroom. That just doesn't sound like a compassionate life to me.
The black market effect itself is the uncompassion. Whereas if we did things more clean, regulated, and more openly, if there were the shoot up centers where they could dispose of the needles properly or be monitored by nurses or
Look at Portugal's model.
yeah, I think there's where the incompassion is.
I think driving them towards sustainment, self-sustainment. But anyways, tell us
The
about
good thing is we don't have to be smart. There's models that work.
Yeah,
You know,
Portugal.
if I was a governor right now, I did two things. I'd have a commission that would go to the places that have salt, like Salt Lake City in Utah.
Yeah,
Literally almost Salt Lake City in Utah.
we're right outside of Salt Lake. Yeah.
And are you familiar with the program they put in place? Was essentially a shelter first sort of program, housing earned sort of program.
Yeah, they've got that now, and we also deal with some other
They're trying.
homeless groups. But yeah, that's a good plan. I like Portugal's model for the drug use because I do believe that. Well, the one thing that I've noticed that is in common amongst almost all homeless is there's some heavy drug use, and I'm not talking marijuana. I'm talking heavier stuff, and I'm wondering that's usually there's got to be some depression involved with wanting to slip into that. So we've got to figure out how to treat that.
And that's what I'm saying. So that's what makes me upset is we have a state and a city that isn't providing those services.
Yeah, but
And that they point the finger because the progressive policy is that, well, I'm going to look at everything through oppressed and oppressor,
Oh,
victim
yeah.
and victimhood. So,
I mean, Wheeler is a hero. He's
come on.
the best thing is I love how he supported Antifa, then they come and lit his apartment on fire. And I'm like,
It's because you can't. It's because you can't please the progressive left.
it's
You can't
because
please the far left.
and not even that had the clear-sightedness to remove his face from his fourth point of contact. Not even that. It was stuck there. He's like fourth vertebrae deep, I swear to God. And not even when they lit his apartment on fire, put his neighbors in danger, did he say, "Oh, wait a minute." No.
I was there about that night, by the way. I was there like almost every night. Every scene
Oh.
you've seen in Portland, I've probably been to. Kenosha, I was there. DC, I mean, I've been to all of them. I was literally there.
Mm.
So, anyways.
Yeah, but tell us about that day. You went into work and they had broken into your restaurant.
And what was your restaurant, Eric? Can you tell us a little bit about it before it was ransacked?
Yeah, what it was, and actually the it's kind of maniacal how I actually closed it to begin with, because the reason why I started that project, my real father, who I didn't know for like 27 years, I reconnected with, spent a couple of times with him, and ended up passing really unexpectedly from type 2 diabetes. And I wanted to, all the businesses that I either start or create, I wanted to have some sort of like deep meaning behind them. So I wanted to have a project. I started investing in a diabetic company and a coaching company, and a few others, but I wanted a project here locally where I could treat people with metabolic diseases and people with like diabetes and like obesity is a real problem in our country. So came up with this concept for this restaurant. It was a nutritional cafe that was endorsed by the Natural University of Natural Medicine. Under Armour hired me, and we were feeding the Olympians and the professional athletes for Under Armour. I was feeding all the children in the cancer centers around here once a month, and their families and the staff, and providing nutrition classes to help people deal with their bodies, dealing with cancer, all sorts of things. All the money I was making through this restaurant, I put right back to my community. I donated meals to schools, so on and so forth. It was a love project. It really was. And when the stuff started happening here and the lockdowns happened, I started donating about 300 to 500 meals a week to the local hospitals to feed nurses, doctors, staff that were overworked and underpaid in that moment. And they were working hard and they were eating on the go and they were getting pizza and all this kind of shit. So I was feeding them nutritional food to help give them energy. And every week I was doing this. And then when the riots kicked off, I wanted to start feeding the police officers. Same thing. And I was just wanting to feed. It's a nutritionist, it wasn't politics. And my business partner at the time said, we're not feeding cops. If we feed cops, we're going to lose 80% of our business. We're in Portland. We can't feed police officers right now. And I said, fuck off then. I'll serve beer and chicken wings. We're feeding everybody. We're not politicizing, and I'm not bending to these people. If they walk in my door one day and they say they're health experts and they're in the woods doing their yoga with their healing crystals, and they say they love everybody, but now they're not going to come here if I feed a healthy meal to a police officer.
Yeah.
That doesn't fly with me. That doesn't fly with me. This false virtue of being loving and kind and caring and all inclusive goes out the window. No, doesn't fly with me. We're feeding the police officers. So he said, I'm not doing it. I said, fine, I'll get somebody else that will. And had people that made the meals. We fed the police officers. Him and I had a falling out, and then I started my documentary project to investigate everything. I was going to reopen the restaurant, and then it got robbed and ransacked and vandalized a couple of times. I'm like, fuck off, Portland. I'm done serving Portland. So,
Are you still in Portland?
yeah, I live here. Yeah, I actually live in a suburb out of here, and I have some other property here and projects here that I'll be wrapping up in this. And I'll probably move my kids, or my kids are like, Dad, my daughter was texting me from school today. She's like, I'm over masks. And these teachers are literally like, if you take your mask down, you have to write, I will wear my mask properly 100 times on a piece of paper.
I thought they called them commissars in the left code.
It is so. I was taking photos at a school basketball game the other day, and I was standing on the end line, and I'm like 50 feet away from anybody, wearing a mask in the gym, taking photos. The athletic director scurries over and says, you can't stand here because of COVID. I'm like, hold on. I'm wearing a mask. I'm 50 feet away from anybody, taking photos for the school Instagram account. And they're like, no, you have to take stands. You have to take the photos from the stands. I'm like, so where all the other people are, like, I have to go sit next to people to take the photos, and that's safer than me standing here. They go, yeah, COVID rules. And I mean, it's wild here, you guys. So, my kids don't deserve to be in that.
Just start complying with it, and they'll change it the next week. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, I know.
Where are you thinking about moving to?
I don't know, man. Actually, I'm coming to Salt Lake in a few weeks. Gonna go check it out for a couple days.
Give us a call.
We're come see a concert a couple of days. Arizona's a place I'm looking at, and then I looked at Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Florida. I haven't yet checked out Texas.
You went and looked at Wyoming?
Yeah, some of my friends.
Oh yeah, that's the Wild West there.
It is.
That's
so not yet. Not my time yet. Not with my kids yet. Maybe in a few years I'll get a good place up there.
Yeah,
not yet.
yeah.
So cross that off. But
no. Yeah, when you come out to Salt Lake, give us a holler.
I'll shoot you an email. I'll hook you up, Eric.
Appreciate that.
We'll meet up. Yeah. This is we'll meet up and go shoot some guns.
There we go.
Utah is extremely gun friendly.
It is.
Arizona's gun friendly. Wyoming, I don't think Wyoming knows that other people exist. So yeah, of course.
Right, exactly.
Montana.
You guys, here's the thing. Like, until the last few years, man, I really did like this place. I do love the outdoors. I'm at the mountain all the time. I travel a lot, so the airport is great. I love our gorge, our high desert. Like, it is really a mecca here for that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
It is.
Chasing Bigfoot.
Jason Bigfoot around. It's just the least loving, tolerant place in existence right now.
Well,
and I don't even say that with a bias. It's gross.
The issue with Oregon is, like every other state that has a city that has a population that dominates the rest of the state. Mm-hmm. The rest of Oregon, Oregon, half of it wants to break away and join Idaho.
Yeah.
And that ought to make Oregon sit and think for a minute. But no, what they're going to do is they're going to say, no, we've got you hostage.
Yeah, they subjugate.
Yeah. And that's what we're looking at. Utah's been pretty good on the mask mandates. Salt Lake is bad. But
I don't think it's anything like Oregon or
No.
New York. I'm from New York myself,
I think-
upstate New York, and
yeah,
we're
you're-
going through the same thing.
You're from a foreign country. We understand.
The upstate New York, again,
I never
reiterate.
did check your visa when you come on this show. Anyways, no, when it's like everywhere else, but the good thing is that the rural still outnumbers the urban in Utah, so they weren't able to get hold, but they certainly tried. The mayor of Salt Lake, she was trying to force all the mandates. It's something that I'm going to bring up in our news the other day, but one of our news agencies out of Salt Lake just jumped on and wants our governor to mandate the National Guard force vaccinations on everyone. And so I when you come to Utah, take a glance at Salt Lake, but then look outside of it.
Yeah, I plan to. We're
Yeah,
gonna catch a show in Salt Lake. I know that's where we're gonna go there.
Good.
It's an excuse. So.
there's much better things outside of Salt Lake. You'll see.
Yeah.
You can head up to the mountains, to the high desert.
It's a great place to raise your kids. The schools are very freedom orientated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's the
And
important part.
spring break, I think I'm gonna do a little road trip out that way in my van and go to the Moab and Zion and
Nice.
Mauritius, that kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
that's the plan at least.
That's an outstanding family trip. But yeah, so to round back, let's what's the website or for your documentary you're doing? I wanna
Yeah,
bring that
there's a
up.
couple things. So the documentary was just kind of one of those things I fell into because I was just genuinely disheartened by what I was seeing here in the violence, and then just it was going to be a 4 month long deal, and then it ended up going over a year and a half. And the reason why is because we really realized that what we're doing, if we did it less than the depth that we went to, then I was just maybe going to contribute to the noise and make another piece that's in the line of propaganda because it was our opinion. And at the deeper I dug, the more I realized that I wanted to create something that's going to be worthy of being shown in the highest level of psychology departments in Ivy League schools. I wanted to be watched by the White House. I wanted to be watched by anybody of influence. So it's a heavy, deep dive into the fallibility of mankind.
Mm.
And we
What's
explore.
it called?
It's called Revelations in Tear Gas. You can go to revelationsandteargas.com. And I'm no longer I have no more active role as an executive producer, so it's in production now. We're done filming, and so the director and his team is working on the full production now. So it's called Revelations and Tear Gas. There's a 6-minute trailer there. The trailer is in the style of which the final project will be. It's just meant to set up some of the questions and show some of the footage and places that we've been, and kind of set up the kind of the vibe and the depth that we're willing to go to.
Well, I'm going to show it on screen right now. It looks.
Oh, you gonna watch all 6 minutes right now?
I don't know if we'll watch. We might turn on it, but I don't know if we'll watch the whole thing. But I think we'll just keep talking and kind of let it play.
Let me. Are you on Facebook right now? Then, right?
I'm looking at it on the .com, but I am also on Facebook.
Are you gonna show it, or are you just gonna look at it right now?
I think we'll show it. It's showing on.
Let's show it.
Yeah,
Do it up.
yeah. We'll show it. I might just turn the volume down and let it play while you chat.
So they need to. I mean, yeah, people can go there, and you guys can watch it there later. But I'm gonna be real proud of the project. It's probably gonna be my life's work in terms of something that deep. I don't want to ever go that deep again.
Oh yeah.
It took a toll,
Oh, I'm sure it did. I'm sure it's just
So if you see like
super
all
heavy.
this footage, like I shot that footage, right there.
Those guys look angry.
well
Yeah.
one of the hard parts I have with
Go back to the beginning.
what's going on with
For
the
us, it started with showing up every night,
left is
Even though we
just
didn't
how
know.
they
if another night even mattered.
They're willing to use violence.
and
So
they don't
openly.
care. They don't care who they hurt.
As the protest
They've become the tools that.
The third precinct burning down in Minneapolis.
Now is that Andy No talking?
That's when I
No,
felt
that's
the
my
need to be there,
director.
Oh, okay.
on the ground.
Yep.
Filming in
That
the
sounds
wrong
like
city.
Andy No. So I guess Andy No sounds a bit more British.
Downtown Portland had changed. The streets were on fire.
Man, that's
Local
heavy.
businesses boarded up as others were being broken into. Graffiti lined the walls of the federal courthouse. The central precinct of the police bureau fenced off as police stood guard as nightly protests continued.
That is heavy. I wonder if I can turn the volume down a little bit so we can still.
And in the midst of all this, as the chants echoed
No,
back
we
and
really
forth
can't.
across an increasingly polarized divide,
Yeah, this
Realize.
is heavy stuff, man.
I've been here
Oh,
before.
dude, it's good. It's a tearjerker.
Throughout our
You
history,
can see our footage. Just watch here.
the riots,
Yeah.
the racial tensions, the fight for justice.
Mm. I am definitely gonna.
Why do we keep ending up here?
I don't know how to make it stop playing so we can chat some more.
Do your thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways,
Watch it another time.
you can't. Makes it big. Oh, all right, Dave. Thank you. No, that's I am going to continue to watch that. I just don't want to. I still want to talk to you.
Yeah, watch it another time. That's good.
Maybe we can even do like one of those show parties on the.
Yeah, watch
That'd be
party.
kind of cool. I'd like to watch it.
I really like what you got going on there, and I think solutions need to be found. And honestly, I know I talk bad about the left, and yeah, I may have said a few times that I wonder what a recoilless rifle just fired involuntarily down a alleyway, full of them would do. But I don't really mean it. I think we need to figure out a solution that involves them, because if we don't, we're doing what they're doing, because they're trying to not involve you and endanger you, and we don't want to be them.
There's all sorts of ancient philosophies about the best way to win a war and how to treat your enemy, and none of them has to do with becoming like your enemy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
Voltaire said it best about staring into the abyss.
Become a monster.
Stare into the abyss, and the abyss stares
don't
back.
become the monster that you're fighting, the devil you're fighting, whatever. And that's the challenge, because that's our human nature, is to you fight at the energies as that you're being fought against with. And yet in today's world, we have the tools like this to influence people. And I think that if we really are smart and we sit down and we think through things and we understand, like, there's probably not a leftist that has read more about leftist ideology and history of racism of black people than me at this point.
And it's all real. It is real.
Yeah.
And there is definitely, even at this time, prejudice happening right now.
Well, I see it all around me now. I'm aware of really these stories, but it's not as insidious as it's made out to be. And because, like we talked about, this meaning thing, this need to find meaning through suffering thing, you can pervert and twist anything to be racist, and that's what's happening. And
the racism that is around now, you can't, on average, find a target to solve it. You can't say, this guy, it's racism that now is it's not built into the system. It's a racism that has left its mark that we've got to figure out a way out of. But there's got to be a better way than, violence and hurting people and clubbing people, which, let's remember, when Trump first started running, and I am not a Trump supporter. I am not. I haven't been. I didn't vote for him. None of that. But anyone who walked around any of the bigger cities with the Trump hat on was assaulted. Let's remember that. And that was what kicked it all off.
Totally. And that's, but at the same time, that is the mode of any radical. That does happen on the far right as well.
Oh, yeah.
The same thing they do. And so I don't want to sit here and discuss things that I haven't directly seen, or, just want to philosophize about, because we can do that all day. But I will challenge people to understand how everything that you think to be true is only partially true, like all of it, all of it. And all of the things that you don't wish to be true are probably also true on some level. And all of these events that I was at, whether it was January 6th, like January 6th, the Capitol building, I'm 10 feet from the front door, right on the steps on January 6th. I was there. We were in Kenosha. We were right after the Kyle Rittenhouse. We were there for Dante Wright. I mean, everywhere, right? So all of these things that I've seen and personally witnessed, yes, it is only one perspective, but I'm there and I'm interviewing, I'm discussing things with hundreds of people. So I have got a pretty big, wider view than just mine. And then I come back and I watch it on either Fox or CNN, and it's so not the actual truth. And so that's the challenge that people have when you sit on the couch and you do watch even both of those. It's so far much of a gradient of all of that shit. And I can't fault anybody for being confused of who to believe and what to believe. I can't fault people for feeling radicalized right now, because what else are they going to do?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Their entire world is geared to confirm their biases. Their entire fucking algorithm on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook is geared to confirm their biases. Right. The people that they surround themselves at work is probably geared to confirm their biases. So I can't fault them, for feeling radicalized. And that's the fucking problem. That's the problem.
It's a good point.
I think you're right. Yeah.
So I've tried not to villainize anymore. And I did a few years ago. I was like, man, can't you see it? Until I realized we are literally in two different worlds, literally and completely in two different fucking worlds. So now I just give a lot more grace than I used to, because I've seen what that does, and I've actually seen now behind the curtain of both sides. It can see. I'm like, oh man, I got it. I see. I don't agree with it, but I can actually understand it.
What's a tool to get through to the radical right? They're so non-existent they don't matter anymore. I mean, they are.
Yeah, the far right. Yeah, no, that's very, and it's buried, and it's buried
They're-
in very geographic specific areas generally.
Sure.
There's no
even
money
then.
in it. There's no money in being
Well-
radical right, whereas being in the radical left, you can get all sorts of money, it seems like.
I mean, the radical right isn't even welcome anywhere anymore. They're gone. But how do you like, what's your playbook to try to convince, say, well, Black Lives Matter? I think Black Lives Matter, the organization is just nothing but corrupt. They are what the complaints that people have had for African American issue spokesman, they just embody that. They take the money and run. Take the money and run.
just to be fair, when we do reach out to the Black Lives Matters here in Salt Lake City, they try to extort me for $3,000.
Yeah, they try to, but I think there's a much easier way to get through to them. But the Antifa, the angry little communists, how do you get through to them?
There's a few things. One, I'll give you an example of another good test I always put to. CNN has a show called Shades of America.
Mm-hmm.
The Shades of America is hosted by Kamau Bell. Kamau Bell is a big, tall, strong black guy, far left, pro BLM sort of guy. It runs on CNN and Amazon. So they wanted to interview me for their show on activism. And in their playbook, I'm their antichrist. I'm the white, conservative, racist male, right? That white male in the middle of Portland, Oregon, that's putting American flags in the middle of the riots to try and stop, to keep on status quo with the racism, right? That was my avatar to them. So I talked to my family about it. I was like, hey, I'm gonna give this a shot. I'm gonna risk my name and my reputation, my businesses, by going on the show and having Ted Turner send out their production crew, and I'll discuss with Kamau Bell. And so they did. They sent out the crew, and I debated for 3 hours with Kamau. Right in the middle of Portland. I said, if we're meeting, we're gonna be right in the middle of downtown Portland, right in front of the Justice Center, in front of all the graffiti, in front of all the shit, so you can look around and see what I'm talking about. They did. And we discussed for 3 hours. Afterwards, I got a call from the producer, Raza Garza, and I talked to him, and he's like, you did it. We can't make you out to be the person we wanted to make you out to be.
How much did they play?
You can't be in the show. What's that?
So they didn't even play you at all?
Couldn't be in the show. They literally couldn't take anything that I said, any stance that I had, and twist it to fit their narrative.
Yep. Welcome. Yeah.
Did you get a copy of the video footage?
Yeah, and I have, and the show that they did show was one of the most disgusting fucking propaganda pieces I've ever seen in my entire life. And I texted him the next day, and I said, listen, man, this producer's a good man. He's honestly a good guy, and he's just had a baby, and we had great conversations.
He's not one of the ones that just got rounded up, is he?
No.
Right.
No. He really honestly is a good man, and he's doing this for a job. And I said, unfortunately, he goes, what did you expect? It's my job. I said, what I expect you to do is be a fucking man and leader for your children. And what you did was put out a piece of shit piece, and you should be ashamed that you're not holding Kamau Bell accountable, because somebody in his circles need to tell him the toxicity that he's bringing to this country. And they put up social justice warriors in their show that I have personally seen attack an old man and beat him to the fucking ground. Right?
I revert back to the recoilless
man standing next to him. I saw him beat a fucking innocent person, and I'm like, you motherfuckers. So
I revert back to the recoilless rifle. I think something gross. Somewhere around 40 millimeter, and just yeah. Anyways,
self-defense.
Yeah, defensively.
Yeah, so my point is, so when that was a long-winded answer. It can be done if you know their talking points better than them. All right.
Yeah.
And if my entire drill when I have these discussions is I don't no longer go into to evangelicalize and convert anybody to a way of thinking. I'm there to lead them through a series of discussions that will lead them to maybe realize, or put me in an environment where I realize I'm wrong. I talk like I'm right, but I listen like I'm wrong, and I'm more in search of the truth than I am in being right in every discussion. So if they can provide a better truth than the one that I'm currently holding on to, I'm going to ditch mine and take theirs. But if they can't do it for me, then I'm going to hand them mine, and it's up to them to accept it or not.
Yeah, I like that. I like that you take them and set them into a visual. That visual situation is so probably stark and right in their face that they can't spin it.
I'm gonna write that one down. That was a good one, Erica. You said you're gonna listen like you're wrong and speak like you're right.
Yeah.
I think that's wise words.
I like it.
I think you should speak like you're right if you're well thought through and if you've done some research and you put some time into it. There's no problem in speaking with confidence. There's no problem with speaking with conviction. But if you let your conviction get attached to your ego and intertwine that with your identity, then you're never going to listen. And the more full of yourself you are, the less you can receive. So I'm absolutely willing to be proven wrong, and I no longer have any egos attached to any of my ideals. I don't intertwine my ideals and my ego together anymore at all. Period.
That's outstanding.
And it's really healthy, and and I think they can feel it from me, And when I put up that TikTok and I said I'm willing to debate anybody, out of the literally tens of thousands of comments, and it was on Louder Than Crowder. I'm doing Fox News nationwide on Friday morning. I'm talking to the guy in San Francisco. I'm talking to him Friday morning. I did doing a bunch of other podcasts, and I debated two guys in my TikTok that says I want to debate you on progressive. Two men. I debated two of them, and I was a man of my word. I took them up, and I woke up early in the morning, and I spent at least an hour with each one of them, and they felt it. They felt I'm being true with them. I was willing to listen to everything that they had to say, and therefore it wasn't inflammatory, and didn't become an argument.
Yeah, and when we hosted those two Black Lives Matter girls, one of them was kind of probably middle class. Her father was a cop, and she was closed off to any conversation. And the other one was on the bottom rung, like collecting cans on the weekends.
Okay.
And she was totally open to listen and conversate. It was really interesting to the one who had less wants was more open or was less open. The one who had more opportunities was less open to any kind of ideas. And the one that was thirsty for any opportunity was listening and taking notes. It was really an interesting conversation.
And the right's just as guilty of that. Like on my Facebook page, I have like 85,000 followers, something like that. And one time many months ago, I said, hey, just as a challenge this weekend, let's all meet and talk to somebody on the total end of the other spectrum of us and just have a good conversation. And next week I checked it in, and everybody was like, man, it was so frustrating. They just wouldn't listen to what I had to say. And, they weren't, and I'm like, see, nobody heard what I was saying. I was saying, go and listen to them.
Yeah.
And everyone came back like, man, they weren't listening to me. And so it's that challenge we all have. We're all human beings, and we, tribalism is our default. We all want to be on a team. But treating other people humanely has got to be a choice, and we're just not that good at that part yet. We're just very good at forming our teams.
Very true. I think the most impressive thing that I've taken away from this is we've got to look at the future different.
We can talk about that as much as you want. I mean, that's been a passion of mine to understand, because I have kids. So parenting for me and getting them, I used to think that I was going to be the guy that I could leave my kids a better world, and I think that's naive, especially in today's world. So I want to leave kids that can handle and are geared to handle any world we end up leaving them. It's been my shift in mindset as a parent.
It might even be a better world if everything is brought to you like that. I think it's the little things. I mean, even if, let's say, the Davos group there, own nothing and be happy, great reset, follows through. I've been trying to look at that. How can I look at that and see it optimistically? I don't know. Is it like the old Venus project that they tried pushing out? I don't know. And maybe that's where I just need to open my eyes and listen to that a little more.
I think if we look at why there's a massive boom in cryptocurrency, metaverse, NFTs, and if we looked at not just the technology, but if we look at the psychology behind it, is where you'll find your answers. and that's how you find your answers of how to prepare your business and your finances and be a parent. Because if you just look at the technology itself, that changes so quickly. But if I understand why is it being developed and why is it being adapted so quickly, then of course there'll be iterations of that, but the evolution will make more sense at the time. So I'm trying to understand the energy and the psychology behind these technologies and why they're being developed, rather than just understanding NFTs, cryptocurrency, and metaverse.
I think it's because we're heading towards living like that documentary, The Matrix. So they're gonna pull us in, and we're gonna
We're
live.
in Matrix already.
Yeah, we're gonna live on a simulated life if we're not already there.
Hopefully a decentralized simulated life at least.
Well, I mean, you know, Elon Musk. Have you heard of Elon Musk company's Neuralink?
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's going to be launched. You know, it's through clinical trials. They're going to have human experiments starting next year.
Well, he
I mean,
said that every year for the last 3 years.
yeah, except for now, it actually is likely.
So it's there.
I'm telling you.
All right, I'll tell.
Yep.
I'll tell you what. I won't mind getting it. I just don't want to be first.
There you go, baby. There you go.
And that may
It's not our
be.
life.
We may.
But you guys, I mean, with AI and things, these aren't, you know, people have been thinking, like, they thought that in 2020 we'd have flying cars and all that stuff, you know, the 1950s. And, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, so there is definitely a misunderstanding of how
And then we
fast-
spent all of our resources on
War.
Soviet Union. And then after that, we spent all of our resources because we built an economy surrounding national defense. And they couldn't shut off that large a chunk of the economy.
but none of these technologies are going to come from the government. We spend
No.
government funding. So that I don't see the connection between the technology advances and the government.
Well,
All
that's the invention of, honestly, the invention of the computer is what has allowed this. The invention
That's right.
and the installation of computers being accessible and usable and all right there is what is allowing that. And that's why the private, I mean, had the government invented the computer, we wouldn't be in this situation because they would have broke it. They would have ruined it. Imagine if the government made your cell phone. How good of a cell phone would you had, or your car? I mean,
like,
we've seen what government
Lada.
cars look like. Yeah, Ladas. The best example of a government car is a Yugo. That's something everyone needs to take in. The best example of a government car is a Yugo.
I don't even remember them.
what's
That's-
that
they're
meme
gone.
I've seen lately? It's something like, there's people that have literally lived through the last 2 years and still want the government to have more control of their life.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah, the government. I mean, let's face it. They haven't. The CIA in 1988. The CIA in the beginning of 1989 didn't know that the USSR was going to collapse that year. Didn't know it. How much money did we dump into them spying on them and probably tapping our stuff too? Didn't know that they were going to collapse under their own weight. You know, we don't even have to talk about the other things that we have seen to have not gotten. I mean, the NSA is awful good at digging through your text messages and pulling out nudie pictures that you and your spouse might send to each other, but you know, they haven't seemed to have thwarted much. You know, the government is its failure on display.
and that's it, but it's hard for people to reconcile sometimes being a proud American and then being so disappointed in their government, you know.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so
that's probably why they politicize everything.
yeah.
Because right now, the average conservative isn't sitting down and looking at the failures of the Republicans in doubling the debt over the last 6 years, in letting things go. And the Democrats aren't sitting down and looking at the failures of the Democrats to uphold a bulwark against government encroachment on the little parts of your life, because they politicize us and made us so that we're fighting each other over saying, no, my side of the government's bad, but it's better than yours.
You know, I'm so glad you bring that distinction up, and that's such a valid point. And that's where we have gotten that toxicity of just blaming each other and looking for the villain in somebody else instead of being willing to look at yourself or your own team or whatever. So this idea of me blaming progressive policies is very important that I made the distinction between the policies themselves
Mm-hmm.
and progressives or Democrats or whatever. I was trying not to indict
Mm-hmm.
a group of people or alienate a group of people so that I could have more conversations. And frankly, that I'm not an enemy of them. We're on the same team. Like if you're my best friend and you start engaging in some incredible destructive behavior and you start doing drugs, and because I bring it to you, some accountability, I'm like, hey man, you got to get your shit together, and you should probably chill out on this destructive behavior. I'm not an enemy of you. I'm your best friend. I'm bringing accountability to you. That's what I look like. That's what I'm trying to do with this city and these policies. I'm looking at it's like a good friend saying, hey man, let's look at these side effects. Let's look at what your destructive behavior is doing. That doesn't make me an enemy. That makes me your best friend. That's the approach I'm trying to take in these conversations instead of being combative with it. I'm trying to grab their hand and go together to find a solution instead of wanting to be right. I'm like, let's come with this together. Like, what can you do to get sober? What can we do to get these people off the streets? That doesn't make us combatants.
Have you been able to make contact? Have you had any sit downs with Wheeler or any of the politicians there in Portland?
Sure. Oh yeah, sure. No, everyone knows who I am.
But I mean, like, let's say Wheeler, what do they say is their goal? Does he think that this is just a hard growth spurt, and once we come out, the butterflies start flying and rainbows and sunshine? Or
so the challenge? So we can talk about it. So my whole base on the way I'm looking at the future of Oregon really has to do with the gubernatorial race that we have coming up this year. And so I personally met with about 6 of the candidates for the Republican side, and I'm working on the team on one of them, working on a congressional team on the finance committee in the strategy meeting, helping with their crafting their messaging. I've met with the House Minority Leader of Oregon a couple times. We talked strategy. They hired me to consult and teach all of the reps that were running for state rep the last election cycle. So I'm very involved in those things. I don't run for office. I haven't run for office because I was going to use this documentary as a way to serve and bring attention to things instead of being in public office, being marred up in the muck. I have another luncheon actually with the man that was in charge of Youngkin's campaign, his political manager. I'm meeting with him on Monday. So I'm very visible in that world, and I do have a lot of conversation in that world. I was just at a dinner actually with the former VP Mike Pence and a bunch of people, and we're having these discussions about what's going on, and they're sitting up there talking about the rallying points of the right. And then how do we bring these discussions to the soccer moms? I'm like, you don't want to be claiming to be the party of logic and reason and law and order, all the stuff that the people in the right rally behind. Those aren't discussions you have at the soccer field with the soccer mom in this example. So there's a big disconnect between the political party's messaging and then what actually needs to happen to have real conversations with real human beings.
Have you talked to any of the politicians that are in power what do they think? What do they think is happening? Do they have like a scapegoat that they lean on, that really this isn't happening because of our policies, it's happening because of...
On the left? Yeah. So the left blames postmodern capitalism, Trump, systemic racism, and oppression.
Okay.
Those are the scapegoats.
So oppression caused the graffiti on the state structures.
So there's a book called I don't know if I have it right here. Actually, I have it even right here. This is a good book. It's called The Righteous Mind.
Yep, I have read it.
You know this book?
Mm-hmm.
So I think he does a good job of kind of breaking out those 6 receptors, the difference in psychology.
Where Republicans have all of them, Democrats just have care and fairness, and anarchists like myself have none.
And so you see what I mean? So when they start doing graffiti, it made me think of this because of this, your book or your example of graffiti and vandalism. They think it's okay to destroy property if you're in the search of a cause. Yeah, just the way their brain is wired.
I think it's in 2 more books away from that one. He talks about how he did a study. I'm not sure. I haven't read this one, but he talks about how he did a study that Democrats will care more for someone they don't know in trouble than for a close family member even.
I think that's even touched on in this book.
Yeah, and Republicans tend to care about their family first, and then they push out to friend groups and then out. But Democrats start on the outside and work in.
And you know why? It goes back to the suffering.
Yeah.
Because then they can inflate the suffering of somebody that they don't know.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Does that make sense? So it's way easier to create this fake villain if it's a false scenario, if it's out here.
You're right.
Sounds,
You're
And
right.
sounds
when
like
you get
abuse.
closer-
It sounds like a form of abuse that they might have suffered in the past or something.
It does. Well,
this
we're
is
all
why-
suffering it.
This is why with homeless, I could go to this progressive city council that we have here, and I could say I have full funding and a full logistics plan and an actual plan modeled after something that works. Go. They won't do it because it's not progressive enough, likely, because if I do it and it's solved, then they're left emotionally unsatisfied.
Have you thought about maybe dyeing your hair blue and trying it?
I don't think I look good. Maybe
Oh,
the
you
mirror.
won't look good. I'll just call it as it is. You know, balls and stripes. You're going to look god awful.
Appreciate you.
But if you walk in, put on that face, they may not hear what you're saying. They might just stamp it. You know, put a fake like stuff in
Tattoo.
your face. You know, fake
I just hired
jewelry.
an actor. I was hired an actor.
I don't know. I kind of like. I think this one you got to take for the team. Feed the homeless. Dye your face. Dye your hair blue and fake tattoo your face. I mean, don't go to the little kids fake tattoo parlor. You'll end up with like a cartoon
Don't worry.
character or something. It won't look quite gangster enough. But,
Mickey Mouse.
Don't worry.
but
Guys, I got to get wrapping up here.
yeah, we do too. Thank you very much. I hope we can reach out again. I like the way you're approaching this with you're approaching this not looking at who do we blame, but looking at where's the solution. And that is outstanding.
It's the only way because everything else is too convenient. It's just too easy, and then nothing gets done. We all feel great about it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but nothing gets done. So why do it? And I'm not here on this earth to waste a bunch of fucking time.
I like it. We need it. Eric, thank you very much. Yeah, we hope we're going to reach out again to you if that's okay in a few months, especially after the documentary comes out.
And if you can send me all the information on the documentary links and anything else you want to connect the audience with, we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll send me. I'll respond to the email with a few
Yeah,
things.
just-
and then
Kick it back to that email.
yeah, I'm gonna try and it's gonna be a test if I do a show on Fox on Friday to see if on the fly on Nationwide if I can find the right words to compel people to have a little bit of grace. If I can, I gotta think about that because it's an important thing to have a platform. Even with my TikTok, I want to try and. It's not about making a difference. I think that's naive. It's about encouraging other people to make a difference. And instead of bearing the weight of some sort of movement and all this kind of bullshit, you just got to create these little sparks in other people. And I think that there's massive power in the individual, and there's not a lot of virtue in sitting back and saying, I wish they would fix this. And, when he gets in power, she gets in power, it'll all be fixed. And I'm like, man, just look in the mirror. We all have so much innate power in us. And that's where the power of the whole United States is from. It's born on the backs of the middle class. It's born on us. And I just can't get over enough of how much undervalue people give themselves. And I think if we just kind of woke that up, that we'd have a really great country again.
Definitely.
Well, I think you're doing outstanding.
And I hope you never do run for politics. I think you'll do
Yeah,
better
I think
in the free market.
that'll ruin you.
Mm-hmm.
One, they'll handicap you, and then you just got to continue running. It'll ruin you. I would like to. I think you being on the outside's the best way to deal with it. I think anyone being on the outside's the best way to deal with it.
But I've gone so far, and it's worked so far, and I believe that you can have influence. And I had this discussion with somebody the other day, and they're like, "No, you got to run for office." I'm like, "You realize how powerful lobbyists are?"
Well, if you're going to run for office, run for a local office. City council, somewhere where you matter. Where some of the people there.
My friends do that, and I actually speak quite often to the city council and the school boards, and I run a lot of the meetings for the youth town halls and stuff that we do here. And so, I'm speaking at the schools quite often and graduations and whatnot. And so, locally is good, but I donate and we design. My wife does graphic design, so we do all the graphic design for the politicians that we support in the state. And I if I were to run, it would be governor. That would be the only thing I would run for.
Yeah.
That would be the only thing
Something
I'd
with
run
real
for.
power. That's for sure.
That would be the only, and the main reason why is because in the state of Oregon, our school systems, essentially the education czar is an appointed position by the governor.
Mm.
A lot of other states, I think like 46 of the other states is really an elected sort of position. It's not a partisan position. So
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why we're ranking so low in our school systems here. And our schools are just a soft spot for me because that's where we have the most disconnect between what's real and what's being taught. And I just, all of these parents that have means have pulled their kids out of public schools.
So one thing I want to mention is the people on the left running this would never put their kids in the schools that do it.
And if they're saying that they're advocates for the disenfranchised kids and minorities and poor, they're creating a larger gap than ever between the have and the have-nots. They're creating this massive gap between the people of means and the people without, and that's just killing me right now to see this.
Yeah, they're uneducating the kids that are in the public schools.
Yeah, it's a real shame.
Yeah.
So that
All
just
right.
so you know, that would be the main motivation. But
I like it, Eric. I like it. Thank you
Definitely.
very much.
cheers,
Yeah.
you guys.
All American Dad 111 on TikTok. He's got a lot of great videos. Check him out. I am impressed with your social media stance. I think you bring up some great points, man.
I'm
Thank you.
impressed with your approach to everything you're dealing with here. And that's
Appreciate you
outstanding.
guys very much for taking the time.
Oh man, no, thank you. This is an awesome conversation.
It is our pleasure.
And you've given me a lot to chew on. I'm going to adjust my approach, but thank you very much. And everyone, we will see you Friday. We're talking with Jewel Allen from Grantsville City Council.
Good night, you guys.
Take
Good
care,
night.
buddy.